November 22nd, 1963, 50 years ago. Is that possible? We haven't been the same since. Camelot, King Arthur, often romantically associated with the 1,000 days of JFK in the White House. But after all those stories, after all those conspiracy theories, after pop culture's take on what happened that fateful day, have we gotten it wrong when we write and rewrite history? And in turn, have we misled today's generation and those that will follow? Questions I pose in our Eyewitness News special report, Camelot Forgotten. First, the reality.
President Kennedy has been shot by a would-be assassin in Dallas, Texas.
Then the myth.
Frame 193, the second shot hits Kennedy in the throat from the front.
Pop culture's take on history, followed by a disconnect. Is this the first time you've really discussed the assassination of John F. Kennedy? Seen this type of discussion?
Yes, sir.
It is.
He says you can't know what's new unless you know what's old.
The newsman who did not forget.
Oswald was literally paraded in front of us.
And where we are now. Ball State University, Muncie. Students heading to class. Students scouring their phones and tablets. Harrison High School, Evansville. Students with their eyes on a grainy 8mm film. They were not there when the shots pierced a sunbathed Dealey Plaza in Dallas, Texas.
And immediately there was just this mayhem.
Steve Bell was there.
This is Steve Bell reporting for WOW-TV from Dallas, Texas.
Former ABC News correspondent and Good Morning America anchor. Bell found himself in the middle of the chaos after the sniper stopped pulling the trigger.
What would go on today, where reporters would be isolated, held up the weapon, say, hey, there's the gun he used. It was a different era.
He is now a retired Ball State University professor. On November 22, 1963, Steve Bell was 27 years old, a reporter anchor for an Omaha, Nebraska TV station, when someone knocked on his door.
And it was the desk assistant who had run all the way from the studio 6 blocks away, couldn't get through on a phone line, packed for Dallas. I said, I can't pack for Dallas. My wife is due any moment with our first child. And she said immediately, pack for Dallas. We've got friends.
You need to have some sense of what's come before just to realize whether what we're looking at now is worth reporting.
Phil Bremen, once working the trenches as an NBC correspondent, is now trying to keep the dots of history connected, challenging students to ask the questions, as the phrase goes, and question the answers in his BSU classroom. One of the dots, the gunshots in Dallas. One of his students, Amanda Richardson.
It's one of those history mysteries that we'll never know. Like, there are so many theories, there are so many conspiracy theories that it gets down to the point where it's hard to believe what's true, and until we perfect time travel and can go back and actually look at all of the angles.
Latest ABC News poll tells us that more than 2/3 of Americans still believe there was a conspiracy to kill the president.
When something horrible and big happens, it is really tempting to want to figure that something horrible and big was behind it. That this couldn't have been the work of just one deranged person. And yet, sometimes it is.
Is this the first time you've seen the Zapruder film?
No. My brother.
Raise your hand if this is the first time you've ever seen that footage. And you'll see this in the footage. There's a fairly good-sized tree right here, okay? And he's shooting kind of over it.
Chad Kane is a high school social studies teacher. On this cloudy day in Evansville, the focus in his classroom, the sunshine of Dallas in November 1963, the assassination, the conspiracy theories, the truth. It begs the question today, have we put history on the back burner?
In some ways. I think in modern public school, there's such a push for skills, especially reading. You have to think about the what ifs. What if Kennedy lives? What changes in history? And, you know, would we have gotten involved in Vietnam? Maybe, maybe not. You know, does Watergate, does Nixon ever even become president?
Do these kids really know how this impacted them?
I do agree that there is a disconnect. I think a lot of it has to do with that rote memory has taken a back seat to the age of Google, in which a lot of kids feel that they don't have to commit as much to memory nor see the significance behind events, since they can go to Google with their smartphone and look information up.
We've dropped the ball by not making history an important enough subject. It's possible to go through high school and college without history ever having gotten to the last 50 years. That's dangerous.
No one believes the disconnect with history more, what and why it is important today, than Steve Bell, who's reported on dissected scores of conspiracy theories, theories accepted as truth by many, theories that have been debunked with today's technology, right down to every angle of that grassy knoll, down to every last frame of that film.
Control what it was not in those days. I went inside the Texas School Book Depository, and you looked out from that window right down onto the street. It was not that difficult a shot.
But the problem is, of course, much of what we think we know from history, we've learned from pop culture rather than from actual news accounts.
If you don't understand and are not able to put into context what happened in the 60s and the 70s, then you're not going to be able to truly understand a lot of what's going on with us today.
These young faces represent the class of 2017 in Evansville.
Mr. Lehman, what role would you like? I'm going to give you first choice.
I want JFK.
Nice. Okay.
Why not?
We'll put you in the jump seat right here.
Okay.
Today's lesson plan, a reenactment. People are very cynical about our government. The seeds of that cynicism were planted with this event that you're reenacting right here.
Did the government kill our president? Was Lyndon Johnson? Heck, even a short time ago on the History Channel, they did a documentary in which they basically blamed Lyndon Johnson for the whole thing.
Back then, it couldn't be that simple, right? It had to be something. We're talking about the President of the United States, and who did it?
So what happens then? Pandemonium.
How many of you have seen this movie? Only one? Probably just as well that it's only one, because there's not much in it that's true.
Many point to the Oliver Stone 1991 film JFK as the pop culture slant that got it wrong, and in the process for millions of young people rewrote history.
I won't even tell you how much that offends me. Oliver Stone did the ultimate disservice to his country with that movie. If there had been any kind of a conspiracy, those Kennedy people who dominated almost every area of government would have known about it.
Kayla Moody is now in her third year as an Eyewitness News reporter.
I think my generation is the most technologically connected, but perhaps the most disconnected from history. I think it's a very distant issue for my generation. I think that we connect more with 9/11.
But I remember he turns, well, you were right there.
He turned toward me.
5 years after Dallas, Steve Bell found himself in Los Angeles. He was within feet of RFK, moments before an assassin took the life of another Kennedy.
We were caught up with this sense of giving, of wanting to make it a better world.
50 years. Has Camelot really been forgotten? Another question. How will today's history try to separate the truth from myth in the next 50 years?
That once there was a fleeting wisp of glory called Camelot.